Greetings students, Lumen students, it's week 11. This is your Thursday video. So here we are. I have had something dangling all week to try to help you understand about dangling and misplaced modifiers. So I want you to see if you can find what's dangling today. And then let's continue on with our spelling studies. I've got some riddles for you today. I'm sure that one falls. The aliens wouldn't fall and that guy falls, okay. Anyway, good luck with your action items on dangling and misplaced modifiers. And let me give you some mysteries related to, or some riddles related to your spelling words. Number 1. What two words are related to corn bellies? What two words are related to corn bellies? Number 2. What two words are related to fuzzy wuzzy? What two words are related to fuzzy wuzzy? Number 3. What two words are related to the light of the sun? Number 4. What two words are a liquid? What two words are a liquid? And number 5. What two words relate to the song The 12 Days of Christmas? What two spelling words relate to the song The 12 Days of Christmas? Hey, let me correct this for you. When you thought about corn bellies, did you think about maize and maize? Right? It's a maze in a cornfield. Maize is another word for corn. Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear who was bare because he had no hair. What two words relate to the light of the sun? So I had rays as one of the words, and then see as the other. That was a little tricky, but you can't see without the light of the sun. We need the light of the sun to be able to see. Okay. Number 4. What two liquids? C and T. Okay. C and T. And what two words are related to the 12 Days of Christmas? Pear, partridge in a pear tree, and Yule, which is another word for Christmas. How did you do in getting those right, students? We're going to start our medieval time studies by reading from this story. It's called Good Masters, Sweet Ladies, Voices from a Medieval Village. I'm going to just share with you one short play over the next few days, almost like a poem about different characters from medieval times. And our first one is Hugo, the Lord's nephew. Okay, so you think about lords and ladies, dukes and duchesses. Those were two of the clues that, or one of the clues that I had given you was duchess. They lived in castles. We think about that, right? Surrounded by moats, which you saw with our alligators in them. And it sounds like that would be the great job to have in medieval times, right? If I could be a lord or a lady, a duke or a duchess, live in a castle, and everything will be awesome. Well, it wasn't quite like that. And I want to read about Hugo's experience. Okay, pay attention to what is expected of him and how he is treated by the Lord. Okay? It talks about how on the Feast of All Souls, which was November 2nd, it's a holy day to honor the dead, he runs away from his tutor. And he sees some boar droppings, which are called franks, meaning this wild pig. Okay? So let's hear. On the Feast of All Souls, I ran from my tutor. Latin and grammar. No wonder. I ran to the woods where I saw his tracks. This big. And the mud he scratched, bottom side of the trees. I followed his freight straight to his bed, and I found it still warm. There was a boar in the forest. When I went back, there was my uncle, rod in his hand. But he didn't strike. I told him, there's a boar in the forest. Why, then, we'll go hunting. And as for you, you'll hunt like a man or be flogged like a boy. Help kill the boar, and I'll give you the kidneys. Turn tail, and I'll have the skin off your back. That night, I lay and dreamed of the hunt. The underbrush churning, the snort of the boar, its foul mouth foaming, its tusks like scimitars. Those tusks can slice a man groin to gorge, but that's not the worst. The man that dies from the wound of a boar loses his soul and burns in hell. Dawn came. We mounted. Long before noon, the dogs caught the scent and the hunt was on. 2 relays of hounds, squealing most sore. The third was faint with fatigue. I could smell my sweat, rank with fear. And then it was like my dream. The underbrush moved, and the stick shattered. I saw it, bristling, dark as the devil, huge as a horse, and my bowels turned to water. My uncle dismounted, and I did the same. My legs were like straw, but I walked, mouth dry, palms wet, one hand forward on the spear, 1 foot ahead. To fall would be death. It charged. My uncle lunged, and I behind him thrust. I felt the spear pierce. I braced myself end to armpit and shoved. It took a long time. The dogs keening and the boar struggling, blood on the grass, but I stood my ground. At last it was over, and the brute lay still. I almost wept, the joy of it and the terror. I gasped like a fish. I let my head fall back. The green leaves swam in the sky. He kept his word. Right there in the wood, we kindled a fire and butchered the boar, and the kidneys were mine, gleaming with fat. He clapped my back and called me a man. But dark of the night, I hear that sound. I sweat in my sleep, and my spear slips through my hand. I dream that I'm back in the wood with that boar. What do you think? Does it sound fun to have to go hunt a wild pig on foot? Oh my goodness, using just a spear with big tusks that could like slice you in half? Well, he did it. He killed his pig, so he didn't get beaten by the Lord. And he had to eat the kidneys. That was actually a good thing. However, you might feel about kidneys and fat. This line should be spoken with enthusiasm. In the Middle Ages, it was difficult to get enough protein and fat in the diet, and so the kidneys of a boar would be a huge, huge treat. I don't know about that. Okay, students, let's pick up with 7 wonders, and then we'll be finished for the week. Day 5, Into the Woods. Whatever happened the night before, Aunt Pretty was chipper the next morning as we made our way down to the church. I half expected to see a faceless fellow wearing long johns or a table all laid out for dinner as we passed through the graveyard, but all I saw were butterflies floating around the tombstones, especially the one with the purple and pink flowers all around it. I squinted my eyes. Mary Haynes Fitzgerald, the marker read. I should have known it, and some of the flowers were violets. During the service, when Calvin played Amazing Grace, I could hear the cloud of bugs buzzing towards Sassafras Springs. In Sunday school, I tried hard not to see Miss Zelby in my mind. I decided to try picturing myself in Colorado, so when Mrs. Pritchard asked me how big a mustard seed was, she caught me off guard. High as a mountain, I answered. She was surprised, but She said that was the general idea, that it grew big because of faith. Later, folks congregated outside to chat. Since they didn't work in their fields or gardens on the Sabbath, our neighbors weren't in a big hurry to go home. Neither was Aunt Pretty. I was itching to get our big Sunday dinner over with so I could round up a couple more wonders. After all, there'd be no chores until evening. With a whole day before me, I might be able to finish my entire list. My aunt was too busy chit-chatting with the other ladies to think about dinner. Pa was in the middle of a long conversation with Marvin Peavy, the mayor of Sassafras Springs. Suddenly, Reverend Carson grabbed hold of me. Folks liked to call him Parson Carson, but only behind his back. "What's this? I hear about you looking for wonders," he asked in his booming preacher's voice. "It's kind of a game," I explained. "Stick to the good book, Eben. You'll find all the signs and wonders you'll ever need there." "Yes, sir," I answered. "That's good advice." I didn't have the nerve to suggest he preach on the theme of love thy neighbor, but some members of his congregation, like Orville Payne, could stand to hear it. Somebody else grabbed Parson Carson's attention, and I went looking for Jeb. I found him under the big maple tree, trying to keep his brothers and sisters from getting dirty. It was not an easy job. "I stopped by yesterday, but nobody was home," I told him. "I had to go see my cousins," he said. I figured. "I got a plan for after Sunday dinner," said Jeb. "We'll go dig worms and sell them for bait on Monday so we can buy ourselves a root beer at the right time." "I want a root beer," Flo whined. "Sounds tempting, but I got something else to do," I told him. "I know, the wonders." Jeb sounded disappointed. "Maybe we can find one down at the creek." "Maybe," I said, but I didn't believe it. Still, looking for wonders could be a little lonely, even with Sal along. If we can ever get dinner over, I can look around some and still make it to the creek. I glanced over at Aunt Pretty, but she showed no signs of moving on. I decided to see if I could hurry her up. She was talking to Leslie Mole when I approached. "I've got a hankering for your good fried chicken," I told my aunt. Flattery never hurts with her as long as it's based on truth. Mrs. Mole poked her pointy face out from under the brim of her yellow sunbonnet. "Eben, are you here to tell you've been paying visits around Sassafras Springs?" "Just asking folks if they have something special to show me." "Mrs. Payne says Orville caught you snooping around. Of course, I'm sure you meant no harm." Aunt Pretty snorted. "Poor Alameda. Orville has plenty to hide, if you get my meaning." She brought a cupped hand to her mouth in a gesture that meant one thing: drinking. That habit was frowned on by both the Baptist and the community churches, except for medicinal purposes. "I have nothing to hide," said Leslie, "even if you want to see something special. Come over and I'll show you my log cabin quilt. I was just a young woman when I won second place at the country fair with that quilt." "Yes, ma'am," I answered, even though everybody had a log cabin quilt. Somewhere Aunt Pretty had 2 or 3. "Well, Lassie, this boy looks hungry," Aunt Pretty said at last. "I guess I'll have to feed him." As we left the churchyard, Leslie called after me, "You come on over and see it, boy." After Aunt Pretty's big Sunday spread, Sal and I trudged back up Yellow Dog Road. Though my stomach slowed me down a bit, I was feeling hopeful, until I heard footsteps running down the hill behind me. Without a doubt, Ray Ellen Hubble knew how to ruin a perfectly nice afternoon. "Are you ready for my wonderful now?" "No, I'm not." I took a firm tone with Ray Ellen. "Well, Junior Watkins' wonderful didn't pan out, did it?" Sassafras Springs didn't have a newspaper, and we didn't need one either, with Ray Ellen poking her nose into everybody's business. "I may have to call the county sheriff and tell him you're making a nuisance of yourself," I told her. "Ha, ha, ha." Ray Ellen didn't sound the least bit scared. "You don't have any idea of where to look, and I have a wonderful for you, so you might as well see it. I'm looking for wonders, and I'm looking alone." I set off down the road at a fast clip. I knew she was behind me, but I didn't look back, not all the way down to town. On Sunday, what few businesses we had in Sassafras Springs were closed. Hiram used to keep the gas pumps open, but there wasn't enough traffic to make it worth his while. Sal and I crossed the county road and headed for the creek. Jeb was already there fishing. "I thought you were looking for wonders," he said. "I thought you were going to dig worms." Jeb grinned. "I already did. I got a full bucket, so I decided to do some fishing." I squatted down next to him. "Better not let Parson Carson see you." "The fish must know it's Sunday," said Jeb. "I haven't had a nibble. At least I don't have to look after the young'uns." Jeb's parents always gave Maggie and him Sunday afternoon off. "Gee whiz, it's boiling hot." I lay back flat on the rock with my feet dangling in the cool creek water. I'm trying to ditch Ray Ellen, I explained, taking a quick look behind me. She was nowhere to be seen. But Maggie and another girl from school, Carrie, were wading through the water towards us. Maggie was scrawny as a stick, but us boys admired her because she was the only girl ever to win the watermelon seed spitting contest at the Sunday school picnic. Carrie was teacher's pet, but she deserved to be, since she never did a bad thing in her life. "Coogie Jackson's got a wonder for you," said Maggie, waving her arms toward the woods. "He wants you to come now." Coogie, short for Jacob Coogan Jackson, had a wonder? Now that got my attention. Coogie was no ordinary boy. At 6 he ate a fly on a nickel bet and declared it tasted fine. At 8 he kissed a toad in exchange for a dish of ice cream. He said it tasted like chocolate, the toad and the ice cream both. At 9, Coogie ate a June bug on a dare. He rubbed his belly and said June bugs had more flavor and crunch than flies. He liked them both fine. Last year, Coogie Jackson ate some leaves for 2 bits and got poison ivy all through his throat and his inwards. They thought he'd die, but he managed to pull through, barely. He ended up a little thinner, a little paler, and a lot hoarser than before. Some of us would try to rile him about it. "Got a tickle in your throat, Coogie?" we'd ask. "Eat any good leaves lately?" Coogie never got upset, but he didn't need anything for money after that either. Still, he had our respect. He knew things the rest of us would never know, and that gave him power. I sat up straight. "Is it true, Carrie?" I asked, knowing she wouldn't ruin her reputation by lying. Carrie nodded. "He told me himself. Come on, I'll show you." It was hard to pass up a summons from Coogie, and it was hard to pass up a wonder, except if it was from Ray Ellen. Jeb and I got up to follow the girls. Sal was already way ahead of us. There was nothing like a bridge over Liberty Creek, but there were spots where you could walk across a trail of fallen leaves and big rocks to get to the other side. We followed the girls deep into the woods to a place I'd never been. Jeb and I tried to explore those woods a few times, but if the chiggers didn't discourage us, the poison ivy did. I wasn't happy about going over there, but like I said, Coogie had power. We stopped in a small clearing in front of an old abandoned outhouse, weathered to the color of ashes and looking like a gust of wind would knock it flat. There were inch-wide gaps in the splintering wood and a tangle of weeds wrapping around it. There was nothing unusual about an outhouse in Sassafras Springs. Most folks still thought a bathroom inside the house was unnecessary, expensive, and maybe even unsanitary. Though Aunt Pretty sighed a lot when she read about big city houses with indoor plumbing and wringer washers and ice boxes. But this outhouse hadn't been used in a long, long time. What it was doing out in the middle of nowhere was a puzzle. There was no house or even a shack in those woods. And you sure as shooting don't need a outhouse if you don't have folks living nearby. Deep in the woods, you don't need a bathroom at all. "Are you funning me?" I asked, trying to make my voice low and even like Pa's. But Coogie stepped out from behind the back of the outhouse. He had hair the color of cotton. If he wasn't a boy, you'd have thought he was a white-haired old man. Instead, he was a white-haired young man with pale skin and light blue eyes and almost white lashes. Albert Bowie stepped out from behind him like he was Coogie's shadow. "What took you so long?" Coogie asked in his husky voice. "I hope you're not telling me this old outhouse is a wonder," I told him. "Looks more like a calamity." "You want a wonder or not, I might decide to go home if you're not interested." "You'd better listen," said Albert. "He's got a humdinger for you." I bit my tongue to keep from saying, "Who doesn't?" "I want to hear it," said Maggie, almost breathless. "Me too," said Carrie. Nobody on earth except maybe Pa could have kept me from hearing that story, but I didn't want Coogie to know it. "Only have a few minutes," I warned him. "Good enough," said Coogie, and he pointed to a fallen tree nearby. "Have a seat, and I'll tell you why this outhouse is a wonder of the world." Maggie, Carrie, and Jeb plopped down as they were told, but not me. I stood face to face with Coogie. "How would you know?" I asked. As much as I wanted to wonder, I was suspicious. "My pa told me. Maybe you don't know it, but he didn't come from around here. He came all the way from Gladiola, Georgia." "So what?" I asked. After all, my pa's people came to Sassafras Springs by way of Virginia. Every family started somewhere else, except maybe the Indians.
It's not where he came from that's important, said Coogie. It's how he came here. Do you want this dang wonder or not? It sounded like a challenge. I'm listening, I told him, but I still didn't sit down. Coogie Jackson's story, Flight from Georgia. All right, students, we'll pick that up again next week. Good luck filling out your action items as you explore dangling and misplaced modifiers and how they can really make a sentence confusing. If you don't put the words that modify something right next to it, you can become confused. So there's a few possible activities for you to do. Little students, you have finished up your how-to papers, and I'm going to be telling you about your next writing assignment as well as history research assignment next week. So we'll look forward to that. And with that, I think we're going to say it's time for some lights out. And we'll catch you next time. Ooh.